I was searching for information on the internet and I stumbled across the case of Randy Steidl and Herbert Whitlock for the murders of Dyke and Karen Rhodes in Paris, Illinois. Randy Steidl spent 17 years in prison, with 12 of them being on death row, and Herbert Whitlock spent 21 years in prison. They both were wrongfully convicted, and Randy Steidl was sentenced for the death of Dyke and Karen Rhodes, both. Herb Whitlock was just sentenced for one of the deaths. Because of a severely botched investigation or corrupt investigation and political corruption that led all the way to the governor's office, and this case just reminded me so much of the Richard Allen case. Randy Steidl was questioned by the police about the murders of Dyke and Karen Rhodes. Randy cooperated with the police, tried to help them. And then he and a friend of his, Herbert Whitlock, were arrested, tried, and convicted. Randy was convicted of both murders and was sentenced to die within 90 days. Herbert was only convicted of one of the murders, so he got a life sentence, not the death penalty. Dyke and Karen Rhodes were found stabbed to death in their home. The home was then set on fire, and this was around 4 a.m. because neighbors heard a scream at that time, and there was a house on fire. The firefighters arrived and found the Rhodes deceased in the house. They had been viciously stabbed to death, and then the fire was apparently set to try to disguise the murder scene. At first, police had no leads. Then, a couple of months after the murders, a citizen named Darrell Harrington, and according to police, Darrell said that he was with Randy and Herb at the Rhodes home when the murders occurred, but also said he was drunk at the crime scene. Then a citizen named Deborah Reinbold came to the police and said she was at a bar with Randy and Herb that night, and she said she was also at the Rhodes home during the murders. So, armed with these accusations, the police detained Randy and Herb. They cooperated with the police and answered their questions, at first without the benefit of an attorney, and as a result of that, Randy and Herb were arrested and charged with the murders. Randy was charged with both, and Herbert was charged with only one murder. Then came the trial. They did not have an adequate defense. It said in the article it was that bad lawyer, but who knows if it was a bad lawyer or a corrupt judge. And then along with that, there was an inmate with Randy by the name of Ferlin Wells. And he claimed that Randy confessed to him and told him about the murders. In the end, the jury found Herbert guilty in the death of Karen Rhodes, and Randy was found guilty in the death of both victims. And Randy was given the death penalty. It was later revealed, and Harrington testified, that the police had given him information and told him to alter his story. Then, still later, Reinhold said she lied. Then both witnesses went back to their original story, that they were there that night, and they stuck with that story. And the sentences remained unchanged. Then 13 years later, Mikhail Callahan was promoted to Commander of Investigations and was handed the Rhodes murder case to review. 48 Hours was about to do a special on that case, and Callahan's command was getting a little nervous. So Callahan sat down to review the case, and he said he had not even turned the first page before there was a phone call from a local police official. He told Callahan that he had concerns about his reputation and being labeled a dirty cop. Callahan said that was definitely a red flag, and the red flags kept popping up. Right away, it was apparent to him that the prosecutor's timeline of events had flaws. For instance, the witnesses didn't mention each other. They only said they were there with Randy and Herbert. So one witness and two perpetrators. In reading the court documents, it was mentioned that investigators at the time of the trial had provided the witnesses with alcohol before their testimony. Then there was the recanting of the witnesses' testimony. There was still a question as to why both witnesses named Randy and Herbert. Then he discovered that just 2 weeks before the murders, Randy had spoken to the FBI about corruption in Paris, Illinois, such as state officials protecting drug dealers and allowing gambling in the small town. So I am of the opinion that somebody from the FBI must have tipped off officials in Paris, Illinois. So Callahan reported his findings to his superiors and was actually told that the case was too politically sensitive. Callahan then sent his findings to the state attorney general. Still nothing happened except that Callahan was demoted back to patrol. Randy was repeatedly denied a new trial by the courts. Then a veteran federal judge, Michael McCuskey, was handed the case. McCuskey had never granted a petition for a new trial in all his years until this case. McCuskey ordered that the state had 120 days to retry or release Randy. And now there's a new attorney general, Lisa Madigan. Callahan quickly took his findings to her. She did her investigation, a real investigation, and she had Randy released after 17 years of his life had been gone because people had statements to make instead of doing their job. Then later, Herb was acquitted and released after 21 years behind bars. I can't even imagine how someone would feel. That's a long time. So does this sound familiar to y'all like it does to me? So that's my video. I hope you enjoyed it, for lack of a better word. And you guys take care of yourself and try to stay out of the crosshairs of the popo. Come back again.